Hey there, I'm Alan Matthews from Classical Guitar Shed, and we're going to take a look at Flocons de Neige. Am I pronouncing this right? Maybe, maybe not, but it means snowflakes, and it is from the Bridges preparatory volume. If you don't have this book and you're learning guitar, then just get on Amazon or wherever you want to go and get this book, because it's got a great collection of tunes at the beginner levels, and it's really good. And I've done a bunch of tutorials on some of the pieces in there as well. So it's just full of resources, and it's really good music to learn. So this piece is from there, and it's a deceptive piece because these are easy pieces, right? Well, not necessarily. The left hand of this piece is not very complicated, but it's a brain bender. This whole piece is such a mind bender that if you don't know how to practice it, then it can be very confusing and it's difficult to make sound good. So in this video, we are going to look at how to practice this piece, how to understand the piece, and how to use this piece as a workshop to learn how to practice better. But first, let's just take a listen to it. Great, so let's just take a look at this score. So what we have here is just a whole field of notes, right? There's this constant cascade of notes going on, and it starts and it just keeps on going. So what do we actually do with this? Well, whenever we have this, there are a few questions that we can ask so that we can determine what is actually going on here. So first things first, look at your key signature, make sure you know what all of your notes are, make sure that you know what all the markings are. What does this mean? PMA, what do these mean? These are your fingers, of course, thumb, index, middle, annular, so PIMA, and then the numbers are the left-hand fingering. So get everything, make sure that you know what all of the ink means. What does this rallentando down here mean? It means slow down a little bit. What's this mean? It means let it ring at the end there. So oftentimes when we have pieces, then the title can actually tell us a little bit. Snowflakes. Well, that's going to be different than chopping wood, or it's going to be different than squirrel, right? It's a different connotation. So snowflakes, we can think of drifting down. So probably not very angular, sharp. We want this thing to flow as much as possible. So the title can be helpful in that way, just to understand what it is that we're going for here. So then when we start to look at this piece, what we want to do first is we want to be able to make small sections. And ideally, those small sections have something to do with the music. So let's just zoom in a little bit here. Oh, but before we do, let's just take a look at what is different and what stays the same. This is one of the best questions we can ask. So the ultimate question we're asking when we first learn a piece is, what's going on here? What is actually going on? What do I need to, how do I understand this music? So some of the things that we look at, so okay, if we look at the bass note, here's a D going on, and then it turns to an A, and then it goes on to the A, and then we're back to the D, and then we're back to the A again, and a little D at the end. So those are big sections in themselves, right? We have the D, the A, the D, the A. And so those we can just pull out, but that just comes from zooming out and looking at it and just kind of letting your eyes unfocus a little bit and seeing what you notice. We could also say the same thing for this upper note. Here's a repeated note on the top, and then it changes, and then it goes back. And so we just start looking at it and seeing what we can see. So what can we do? So we can also look at this and notice that we also have a stem up right here and then stems down. So this first note has a double stem, right? And that's just to keep time. So then we have a stem up, two stems down, a stem up, a stem up. So it looks like every first grouping of the three notes is a stem up, and then the other ones are stems down. Well, that's a huge piece of information. That tells us what's the melody and what's not the melody. So then once we find our melody, then, well, now we're cooking, because now we can start to understand what it is that we're doing with this piece. Now, what most people would do would be to just start at the beginning and play the first note, then the second note, then the third note, and then and just go forward like that. But that's not going to end you up at a musical result. You might end up getting all the notes, but it's going to sound... There's not going to be... you're not going to get your snowflake effect with that. Instead, we want this to be as the composer intended. Got to be true to Mr. Frederic. So what we're going to look at then is just the melody. And so when we're practicing, we don't have to practice the piece, we can practice the issues within the piece. So here we have all of these melody notes. And that one actually got left off. But so here we have, we could play just the melody by itself. As we go through the whole thing, but we could just do it just for this section. And so then once we got that, now if you're a more advanced player, then this would be the point at which you would insert your phrasing. And so you would decide on, how am I going to shape this? When I'm going to be really intentional about how the musical line, in this case the melody, how it gets louder and how it gets softer and all this. And this would be the point at which we could do that. So we're not playing the piece and getting it all the way up to where I can play all the notes just fine, and then I'll sprinkle some kind of beauty on top of it like a finishing salt. Instead, we got to build it right into the guts of the piece. Now, if you're just a beginner, then you might skip this stage right now and just go for getting the notes, and that's enough of a challenge all at one time. But as you progress, the more that you can spend time on this kind of stuff, that's where real technique comes in. It's where real ability to work on your music and get better. And that is actually what builds technique, is the demand of getting louder and softer and balancing the different things to where this is soft and this is loud. That really trains your hands. So, but first off, just know what the melody is and just play that just by itself. Once you've got that, then you can look at what the other notes are and how that fingering works in there. So we have this F sharp on the top. We've got this F sharp right here, and that just constantly goes on. So we've got the D and the F sharp, right? We've got those going on. So this is a kind of an atypical piece in that the melody is in the middle. So we have a melody note, then we have a low note, then a high note. And so they're both accompanimental voices, kind of bass and accompaniment, but the melody is in the middle. And so that can be a little bit tricky because the high note really wants to pop out. And it's not, that's not the piece. That's not the piece. The piece is, and with this little going on in the background. So whenever you're hearing it, you need to know exactly, your listener needs to know exactly what the melody is, what it is that they're supposed to be listening to, right? So it's just like if a whole bunch of people were talking at the same time and you didn't know which one you were supposed to be listening to, it would just be cacophony. You wouldn't understand what was going on. However, if there was one person that you knew that you were going to listen to, they were the loudest, and then there was just chatter behind them, like in a cafe, then you would know exactly what was going on. So one of the ways, so then we have to say, how do we actually practice this so that we can bring this out, right? And the first thing is to, like I said before, is just focus on the melody first so that you get that in your ear and you know what it is that you need to be hearing. So when you practice that, don't fake it by still playing everything and just trying to listen to that note. Actually play it off. And if you don't use the right fingerings, that's okay. And the left hand or right hand fingerings, all that doesn't matter at this point. Just bang it out so that you know what those notes are in your head. And then we can do a number of things in order to get this to where we know how to play it, right? So one of the things that we can do is to just take out one of these notes. So let's just take out the F sharps and play these like they're just like they're eighth notes. So we could just take that out, and then so this point right here, changing to the A, is kind of a tricky thing. You're gonna have to wrap your head around that because it feels funny when you're playing it. And so then really pay close attention to where it is the first A falls. It falls right after this B right here. So that's where it falls, is right after the B. So just know that and then go through. So now we're practicing in a different way. We're not just playing the piece, we're actually practicing the piece. And so the goal here is to keep the thumb, that D, really quiet, so that we're playing the melody loud and the D is quiet. And yes, we've changed the rhythm here. There it goes. So we pull that back and just do those so that we can know exactly how the bass does and be able to get that balance. Melody's loud, bass is quiet on that. Then the next thing we can do, and this is going to take some time, of course. The next thing is to swap that. So that then you have the upper voice. So now we could just do just eighth notes, and we have the D and the F sharp, C and the F sharp, up like this. So just as eighth notes. So we're out of 6/8 and just into the other. Now, so that's another step. So these are different things you can do in your practice. I'm just blasting through them, but this will take a little bit of time to work with this. So it doesn't mean that you have to master the entire piece like this, although it's great if you do. The other thing is to put them together. So now play both the F and the D sharp. So now I'm playing the F and the D together, right? And so then those become a chord right after it, still eighth notes. Then you can play all, and there's not any particular order that you have to do this. I'm saying then, but it doesn't have to be in this particular order. Then you can also just play all the notes together for each group of 3 notes. So we have the D, the D, the D, and the F sharp at the beginning. So that you work through the piece this way until you derail like I just did. And that way you're thinking of it as a group. And that's just going to help you. So we're looking at it in all of these different ways instead of just banging out the piece. This gives us a real deep understanding. It also, you'll probably end up memorizing this without even trying by going through these different steps. And finally, you can put it all together. And so as you put it all together, there are a number of different things that you can do with the rhythm to make it so you could go, because we still want that melody to be loud and we want the other voices to be quiet. So what you can do is to put some space between them. So you have loud, break, soft, soft, break, loud, break, soft, soft, break, so that you can separate that in your head. Now, obviously you wouldn't perform it like this, but what that does is it trains your physiology and your ear to know that, okay, this is one thing, these are another thing. And that's the goal here, is to be able to think that this is 2 different things, really 3 different things. But we have loud and soft, and separating at least those, melody and not melody. So melody, not melody. And make it exaggerated, very loud, very soft. Also, if you've done your phrasing and you want to, if you've shaped that very intentionally, then you would be doing all of these while putting in that shaping, so that you're always, you know that it's going to get louder to there and back off, and this comes out and this doesn't come out and all that kind of stuff. So you would be doing all of this, each of these steps with that in it. And so, which just makes it even more difficult, which is why I just laugh to think that these are easy pieces, because they're anything but. So once, if you play them to a high level, they're anything but. So then you can put in and start playing it all together. The note right after the melody note, the note right after an accented note or a louder note is typically the one that's difficult to play quietly. In this case, it's the thumb. Watch out that stays quiet. So in the end, we've done this thing. We've just turned it every which way but loose. We've done it a bunch of different ways. There's a couple of things as well. When you're playing this, keep your tip joint soft so that your tone is really soft. Work with also the freedom in your arms. You're sitting. You can't play snowflakes if you're all tensed up. Snowflakes aren't tensed up. So work on how you're actually using your body in it as well. This is a part of practice. When you're practicing, can you play it to where you have not very much tension in your face, where you can release your whatever it is, just try not to tense up so much when you're playing this, and it will end up sounding better. Now, of course we want to go up to feet. This is allegro, it's fast, but slow and steady wins the race. It'll get fast. The main thing is that we understand it, we eliminate the confusion, and then we can speed it up as we will. So this has been Flocons de Neige. I hope you've enjoyed this foray into practicing this piece. The main thing is that we don't just play it from the beginning to the end. We look at it, we dissect it, we say, what's going on here? And then we put it together in different ways so that we understand the relationships of the different parts, how they fit together, and be able to be intentional with each of those parts. And then it comes together and is this beautiful thing. And it's a joy to play and it's a joy to practice. So I hope you've enjoyed this Flocons de Neige by Frederic Costantino from the Bridges series preparatory book. And please subscribe to this channel if you haven't. And I look forward to seeing you in the near future. Bye-bye.